All right, all right. So for everyone that is watching the recording, welcome to Wyckoff Sundays episode 10. All right, we're gonna go into a new trading week here. All right, super excited, super grateful to be back here with you guys today. Shout out to everyone as well that is on here live. And yeah, let's go ahead and tap in. So obviously, first thing is us going into the past, seeing what we were looking for last week, right? So obviously we spoke about dollar. We spoke about all the buys that we were going for over the past weeks. And we spoke about the order flow here that was presenting to the downside. Basically, we called out a zone here to potentially see reactions from to go short. We looked at this area here. As you guys can see, we were talking about this internal liquidity sweep in that level, right? We were looking for price to eventually get up into that zone to basically go ahead and look for shorts from, right? And so we saw here that right when the market sorry, where is it that we have the zone there called out? I just want to see where we have the zone. There we go, right there. Right. So we were looking at about 100.02 for a zone to potentially see shorts from, right? And so that 100.02 is sitting at right around this level here, right? So right after the market opened, we instantly saw price go into the zone. So for anyone that obviously was live on the call, you would have had an opportunity to look for shorts on USD. And that was pretty much how it went in the beginning of the week. So it was a very, very quick move up, right, into the area. And again, an even quicker move right back down, right? From there, we pretty much had the market, after that reaction. Now we can see the recovery. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that in a bit. But yeah, we got the initial reaction off of the level. It was a pretty good sell from that zone. But again, obviously ended up being short-lived. But it was a very quick move down towards new lows, right? So definitely below previous lows, right? Getting back into an area where previously we took buys from, right over here in this low is where we took our USD CAD longs like the week before. So seeing price get into that area, seeing price swiping below big wicks as well, definitely a reason to look for partials inside of that area. Obviously, again, like I said, it didn't hold up like in terms of like really looking for the long-term short. But again, this is why it's so important to play inside of extreme areas because you can get reactions, right? Even if you're not right about the long-term move, you can still catch some pretty good risk to reward. So that's what we were talking about here on dollar last week. And that's really the main thing we spoke of, right? Personally, what I wanted to see was for us to, really hold up, this high and potentially even get below here, right? I mean, my most ideal area for us to obviously see buys from was down here. So that's personally where I wanted to buy. Instead, we didn't really get that break below this low. We just ended up obviously holding this order flow here and continuing to push to the upside, right? Obviously, bigger time frame wise, what we've been saying on here for Wyckoff Sundays for a while has been the potential of this zone here to be a higher time frame accumulation. Ever since we saw this institutional down candle right here, that was pretty much like our sign that like, hey, maybe if we retest here, we can end up seeing longs here, right? So again, like we said, we ended up taking longs in this area, in this area, and in this area. So now we've just seen price again hold once again that structure. So it's just looking a lot more likely that again, this is has the more and more likelihood of really being that Wyckoff accumulation, right? So it's starting to give a lot more validity to our theory that we've been looking at for a while now, right? I'd probably look at the trading range as something like this, right? Kind of having this low to this high being our AR, right? We test the bottom, we test the top, we get our ST and phase B to our UT, right? Comes back down for our spring. And then from there, we've had our bullish reactions from here. Now, obviously, like I said, I did personally want to see price just get a bigger retracement, right? Start to fill some imbalances that were, placed in this area. But unfortunately, again, we didn't really get that, right? And we just ended up simply following order flow to continue to go long, which is fair, right? I think this makes a lot of sense as well for us to just, again, like, even though we do see potential, sell ideas up here, we did get a really good sell idea in this area that played out. It didn't end up being the long-term move. We just end up sweeping through this low and continuing to buy back up. So definitely interesting to see, right? Definitely like seeing order flow like that hold up is obviously a good sign of like we said, this really actually being an accumulation and not turning into a redistribution like we were potentially thinking prior once we got above the highs here, right? So it really is starting to look like dollar might be looking ready to gear up and really make that full recovery, right? Maybe start to head towards 101.8, start to head towards even 104.5, back into the highs that really started our, huge impulsive move down, just in the beginning of last year, right? Pretty much when Trump took office, we've been seeing a huge push down, right? And then now, since obviously we've had, pretty much the later half of the year, I mean, we started to consolidate, but then really the war, obviously has us expecting dollar to continue to rise, as it typically does, with that, right? So, yeah, that's really, I mean, like what it looks like price is just continuing to do. So, what we've really had from what it looks like last week, I mean, when it comes to the sells and stuff, like now that we've had price essentially sell from our area, right? Oh wait, sorry, we're not, sorry, my bad. We're not going into what we can think happened yet. We're going into the past, right? So that's what we were looking at there for, dollar, right? We were looking for those sells from that area. We'll talk about, what we can see in the future later on. Then we went into USD currency pairs, right? We spoke about Euro USD, the potential of this being an accumulation, and Euro USD here, right? As we can see, we did end up getting, buys from our area. But as we can see, we did react, from these previous highs up here, right? So we do see the market reacting from these highs the same way that dollar was reacting from these lows. And obviously we did get the buy reaction for dollar right around here, right? So for anybody who was on Wyckoff Sundays, I know there was some people on the call who did manage to catch this entry. They caught a huge move up, right? Right now it looks like it's most likely going to be coming back down to hit out at break even, which it is what it is, right? As long as we're taking partials in good areas, we can still, obviously call that a really nice move, a really nice trade for us to play out from. I believe the zone that we called out was right there, right? And so that's basically this area right here that we did end up getting a buy from, right? So really, really clean reactions, I would say here when it came to, that zone. But again, it just didn't end up holding up for the longer term, right? We spoke about some other pairs as well, things like GU. I did say the most likely scenario for GU was that we were going to see price get a little bit lower, right? Chances are we are going to get that this week now. So I do think GU can probably reach towards like 1.3157, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that is what we spoke about last week, right? Is, the possibility of GU entering that zone. We didn't end up getting that. We can see that GU ended up holding these lows, right there, right? So going into next week, right, we'll talk about that, again in a second here, right? So that was GU. We spoke about AU, the probability of AU actually going ahead and driving down below this high volume low that we pointed out on the call. And that was probably going to be the first zone that we were going to be heading for. And so when we saw AU, right, obviously, this is that area here, right? We spoke about this high volume low price pretty much instantly went towards that low, right? We did have a reaction from that, right? So, personally for me, I ended up switching into the in the weekend. We ended up looking for buys here, right? Which ended up, obviously being a small L for me personally, right? Because again, like I ended up cutting things short here pretty early on with AU. But it did end up just continuing what we were looking for higher time frame wise, right? So this buy here ended up obviously not really being a long-term idea, really just a quick move back up into previous highs before then just continuing the overall trend, which is, obviously here we can see with AU, this does look like a potential bigger time frame distribution, right? The same way that dollar has a bigger time frame accumulation, right? It does look like AU, right, is really just playing that exact same thing, right? So, now we're really getting below the lows of the distribution. So it'll be interesting to see if during this week we do end up getting like something shifting. But looking at dollar, it really doesn't look like that. But we'll talk about that here in a second. All right. So now we've got AU there. Right, that was what we were looking for there, was for price to go ahead and go lower, right, to the zones, and then hopefully from there buy. Again, like we didn't end up getting completely below, so that probably should have been a red flag, the fact that we didn't get below here, to go ahead and, obviously look for the continuations long. Hasn't happened, yet, right? We'll see how this all goes. We spoke about NU as well, the buildup of liquidity that we're seeing here on NZD USD. And again, it still is there, right? We still do have NZD USD, holding this trend line here to the upside a little bit too cleanly, right? But what we do see though also is, there are signs of manipulation in each of the highs that are touching the trend line. So, for example, we see here at the top, we have these highs here, right? Sweeping right there. We have this high here, sweeping right there. We have this high here, sweeping right there. We have this high here, sweeping right there. So right now the order flow is still very bearish, right? But again, like when it's just too clean like this, eventually I do expect that to get cleaned up. So it could be that this is, again, like when it comes to NU and some of these other pairs, maybe we get a little bit deeper before then, getting the next impulse to the upside. So we'll see. But definitely the order flow right now is very clean to continue bearish, with the way that these pairs have been looking, right? So with NU, right, that's what we're still, looking for, waiting on, right? USD CAD, we were really just looking to continue long. I mean, there was really nothing there that told us that we could, be going short. We obviously had our longs from before that, I wish I was still in. But obviously such is life. And then we end up having USD CHF, which is obviously we were looking at for the potential of a distribution here. We were looking at the volume buildup, right? So we had a very high point in volume right here, right? Again, we have a lower point in volume there, and then when we get to the high, right, we get an even lower point in volume right there, right? So again, volume divergence there, right? That we were looking at. We called out that institutional candle as a potential zone to sell from. So I believe that was right there, right? So you guys can see us drawing up that zone right there. And USD CHF, if we go ahead and look at it, where is it? USD CHF, here we go. Right. We did end up getting a short from that level, right? So I guess this is an old markup here. I'm gonna delete this. So yeah, so this was the zone here on the 4 hour that we were looking at, and right there, right? So, pretty much that's what we were looking at, right, with Wyckoff Sundays was that zone right there, right? So Wyckoff Sundays was right around here, right? And then after we ended up finishing Wyckoff Sundays, we can see the market barely traded right back into that level, right? Perfectly, again, giving that mitigation. And then from there, going ahead and creating a new low in the market, right? So again, good short-term move, right? From here to here, that's pretty much what we would expect, right? Whenever we're looking for like a type 1 setup, or like for a reversal setup in general, we obviously want to be paying attention to these lows, where we see the market come up from, right? So when we see price breaking through, obviously that's going to be partial areas. Obviously that's going to be areas where if the market's going to reverse from, right, it's going to be after, taking lows and stuff like that. And that's kind of what we were expecting. Like what happened here with USD Chef is kind of what we were expecting to happen with dollar, where we wanted to see the market again, like, go into that zone, get below these lows, and then from there look for the buy, right? Obviously on dollar side, we ended up holding this higher time frame low. We did sweep this one, but when we look at USD Chef, right, this relative low that is there on dollar, right, I believe is what we ended up sweeping there as well. So again, that's kind of what we were expecting, but didn't end up getting with dollar. So UChef again looking quite strong at the moment, right? Looking quite strong at the moment with this. So that's all the dollar pairs, I believe, that we spoke about, right? And then we got into metals. So metals, what we were saying was we had a very high point of volume here. We were expecting price to come down one more time. And then from there, like basically accumulate to then give us the next potential long idea, right? I believe when it came to metals, we did get one more push to the downside at the beginning of the week. And then we ended up continuing with that, right? So let's go ahead and see where that high volume low was. What time frame was this? This is the 45 minutes. Okay. Where's my volume? Here we go. I don't know exactly where that was. I guess we could just look at the day. So the last Sunday was the 22nd. So yeah, that would be right around here. So we were looking at this low here then, I guess, right? If I'm not mistaken, it would be that low. I don't know why it looks different, but maybe because we're on A cap. But yeah, this would have been that same low right here, right? So we had the market trade up, right? Create these highs, right? That's this. Market trades up, create the highs. We were looking for price to get lower and then looking for the potential long opportunities from there. We can see that when the market opened up, right? We ended up having a big sell-off down, below lows, right? There was another zone that we were talking about here on Wyckoff Sundays, which was this daily down move here. We can see that really, this is our last point of reaccumulation that we've had, right? So I believe we marked up that zone, if I'm not mistaken, right? We spoke about obviously the sells there and everything about that, but I know that we did end up drawing up this zone down here, right? Where is it?
Still, we are in an extreme area. We did get some pretty good volume in that low and everything, but we're just going to need to have a full-on setup really appear for us to really go ahead and take.
But yeah, again, like this was really the order flow setup, which was, this low, us driving back into that low. This is really that extreme area setup where, we could potentially see sweeps down into that level. And that's obviously this area here, right? So, I do wonder if we can finally start to see that recovery there on gold. Again, like with how price ended up last week, it's really not too bad. We had a really clean accumulation print here, right? And we had some students as well catching some longs here from this area as we came back into that accumulation, catching some pretty good risk to reward there on that push to the upside on Friday. So yeah, and again, like we're even getting back into order flow, when we did that too. So right now, to me, I mean, the evidence is looking pretty strong to see another impulse to the upside, right? I mean, like we're having pretty good order flow, right? Like obviously this area that came into the bigger time frame zone here, we see the market sweep through all these lows before making a new high, right? Then we see the market get back into that area, right? Manipulating again, right? Again, like seeing these lows here get taken, these lows here get taken, right? We end up reacting up, retesting, and continuing, right? So it kind of does for me favor, like evidence wise, for us to actually go ahead and break 4,600, right? And then maybe even get another impulse, higher towards like, kind of correcting, the imbalances that are made up here. Maybe like, again, like this area was where we really wanted to see sales from last week was here, right? So definitely that's going to be a first target for me. And we'll go ahead and see what happens. But, when it comes to the push to the upside up here, right? Like this could be the next move, for gold, right? Could be like maybe even us reaching above 4,650, right? So that could be the move, right? We'll see how that ends up going. Again, even when it does come to what I will mention though is when it does come to this push to the upside here, it is very fast, right? Which could be, again, a reason for price to reverse. So if I'm going to go ahead and look for long-term longs, I'm going to want to see this break and then have a retracement, right? So if we can have something like that happen, I mean, that would really give me, the most confidence that we can, go ahead and see the next long is us actually breaking through the high, showing that this isn't going to be like a redistribution type of move with that impulse. And then from there, give us a retest to give us the long, right? That can definitely still happen. It might take a couple weeks, but that can definitely still happen for us, right? So that's what I'm thinking here for gold. Again, if we just open and we see the market trade off of this level and dump through, then obviously this is going to potentially be a redistribution scenario where we get the lower high. But right now, there's just not enough confirmation for me to look at that. Because again, this could be a point of interest, but when it comes to the evidence that we've seen so far, this is really good manipulation. This is really good manipulation. And this is really good manipulation. This also could be good, but there's only one of them, right? We're actually seeing order flow pushing for the buys, but we're just seeing one move there for the sells, right? I know we're in a downtrend, but as long as, again, if we don't like reverse straight up from this level, then I think that there's a pretty good chance that we might even be seeing, some longs actually come into the market here, even if it's just a short-term recovery, right? So we'll see how that ends up going with gold. But I do think again, like, those are really the two main areas to look out for. If we can really see a break above this level, show us that this isn't going to be a redistribution, and then we get the pullback, I might even look to hold this for a long-term move back up to where we had, just a few weeks ago, right? On the 19th, that's where we were here because this is a very fast move, guys, down, right? And what's fast don't last in this market, right? What's slow grows, and that's typically what I want to see is like, again, slow order flow, the way that we're seeing now, right? We're really starting to stabilize a lot more for the buyers. So, even if we do end up getting a sweep of the order flow or whatever, again, as long as we break this, then I would feel good about looking for longs, again, right? So let's see if we can break that high or not. That's really going to tell us a lot more about it. If we can really see those gold longs continue, right? Only time will tell. Now we have silver as well, right? Silver ended up coming into a good area because we see how the market just barely swept below this low here that's been holding since the crash, right? We had the market again, like just barely getting below there as we can see here, right? So when gold did that push down, this is what silver did. Silver came just barely below there and then gave a really nice reaction to the upside, right? Now, when gold had that push to the upside, right, which is the same here as this silver push to the upside, right? So this silver push to the upside here is the same time as that gold push to the upside there that we were just talking about, right? So what we can kind of notice is obviously with silver, there's a lot more potential for this to actually be like equal highs as opposed to like the redistribution potential that we kind of see with gold, right? So we get that strong buy out of the zone, but then again, it doesn't even sweep it. It just holds these highs basically perfectly as a one-to-one to basically like be equal highs. You know what I mean? This range here, right, really gave a lot of opportunity for selling. So I do wonder if, that zone there can end up being a target for us to buy from later on, right? If that's the case again, like that's where I'm saying I do feel like the evidence right now is looking stronger for maybe even recoveries here with gold as opposed to, continuations lower, right? Granted, again, like I said, if the market just opens up here and crashes down, I'm not going to look for longs there. But if we can get sustain here a little bit more, right? If it's not just like this one up candle and then we drop, if we can like sustain and then pull back, I would like it a lot better for long. So we got to see how price action reacts now as we get into the new week. Because again, it could easily be that, we just do a quick buy up into this area and then we sell off, right? Same thing as with gold. So we want to be careful for that scenario, especially given how fast the move was on Friday. But personally, guys, I am leaning towards the longs once again. All right. So only time will tell. We shall see. We shall see. I mean, when are we not leaning towards the longs on gold, really? Right. So there's gold, there's silver, right? Oh wait, I was kind of going into the future there, I realized. Yeah, and then US 30, right? So we kind of mixed up this whole call here. We got the mix of last week and this week. But yeah, US 30, again, we were looking for to see if we can get longs from these areas. We drew up this zone here on NAS that we wanted to see price tap into. Price never really came into there until the end of the week, right? So now we're really seeing again this zone here that we had on NAS to hold into there. But honestly, guys, I mean, with the way that this is looking right now, it's looking a lot weaker than I would like to see, to be real. Obviously here, what we spoke about was like the tariff lows, right? So this is the lows that we got from tariffs, and again, like I was speaking to this with a one-on-one student the other day. But again, it's like we can see here like how fast this push to the downside really was, right? When I saw how fast that was back when tariffs was happening, I was a lot less inclined to like really look for the longs during that time, right? Versus the way that we have been since the war, you know, we have not really like again been selling off like a cliff. We've been mostly consolidating for the most part, right? Obviously, like we've spoken about these institutional candles and stuff like that that have shown up. But again, it's like we've been kind of holding the buyers up for the most part, right? Now at the end of last week, I mean, we're really starting to bleed. So I'm honestly kind of starting to doubt, if we're really going to be seeing, short-term longs here when it comes to indices, right? I think indices might be suffering, maybe for even longer than we expected. If we do decide to get down into tariff lows, obviously this is going to be the next area where we can maybe see, longs come from again. But now, really breaking through order flow, right? Breaking through the lows that created new highs, it is looking a lot more scary than it has. So, I think like even looking for NAS to maybe again like sell off and, again reach towards like the imbalanced areas here, or even these imbalances where it aligns with really that last push down from tariffs, that could be the move, for the future here, right? So, I don't know, tough to say, right? Obviously, because, indices are something that historically is extremely bullish, right? But right now we're obviously in an interesting time where there's a lot of fear, right? Which is going to cause a lot of sell-offs. And then from there, once fear really reaches its high, once we really see that, everyone's like, oh no, things are over, obviously that's when we're going to really see the recovery happen, right? So honestly, I might, be switching because I know pretty much every week we've come on here, we've talked about the potential for the shorts, right? But we haven't, really like looked for them, to be honest, right? Because we haven't broken through, order flow, right? So until we really start to break through order flow, like I said, the way that we are really starting to see price do now, then we're not like, for me, like, especially for some things that are very bullish, like NAS, like gold, like all this stuff, we want to be more cautious about like switching to sell so easily, right? But I mean, now, with the way that things are looking, I mean, this is kind of a potential confirmation that like, hey, things aren't doing so great, right? Maybe this war, will end up giving us, deeper prices on that. Whether that be, again, this imbalance, I think is going to be a clear target. I don't really think we're going to react here anymore, right? I think that most likely these lows that are here are going to be a target for us, right? And then from there, maybe even tariff lows can get hit. And I think tariff lows are a great place to start loading up, for this, right? I don't really see us getting too much lower than that. When we look at it, let's see where this is here. Let's see here real quick. So where did Trump take office? Here. So Trump took office right around these levels, right? So I don't really expect the market to like, for example, like hold below that for very long. I think that the stock market is a very important thing to Trump, and it really determines his success as like a president. A lot of the times it's how people are really looking at it, or not people, but him and like the people around him. So, because again, I mean, obviously he's got his rich friends, he's got to make richer, right? So, I do think that if we do get below where we end up, seeing where Trump took office and people are starting to look at it as, oh no, Trump, obviously made things negative. I think it's going to be short-lived. The same way that tariffs were. I think this was a buying opportunity that was huge last year, right? And so I think that same thing can happen again. And again, if we even look at the timing of it all, I mean, from a seasonality perspective, it's really interesting because this push to the downside started when, right? Around February, the end of February, March, right? That we bottomed out around April, right? The beginning of April here. This is April 7th, right? Now here, right? This is where we're starting to get the real push down now, right? End of February, we're going into March. Now we're starting to get a higher time frame retracement. I mean, it's possible that, we get down towards those levels. And then from there, we look for just honestly some potential generational buying opportunities there. You know what I mean? But we'll see. We'll see how things end up shaping up over the next couple of weeks. Again, we are in a very like difficult time in the market, right? Like, it's super unpredictable, right? The VIX is very high, the volatility is very high, right? So we got to be really careful, obviously when it comes down to it. Small stop losses, right? Play in extreme areas and, taking partials in whatever you're doing, right? And as the market starts to confirm, what you're looking for, then, continue to hold those. So I saw someone say they were in NAS sales. That's awesome, right? Good for you. Congrats, right?
So
But yeah,
it's pretty
cool. So
clear and
that's really the
obvious
idea
that
there. All right. For indices, right? Potential tariff lows retests honestly are looking more and more likely as we go on, right? Now, we also spoke about crypto last week, right? So BTC, right? We spoke about some potential buys from this level here. If we didn't see buys from this level, then we were looking for sells from this zone all the way up there, right? And really both played out. I mean, we have BTC again. So where's that relative low we were speaking on? Right, I believe it's here, right? So it's this zone right here, right? So this was the zone that we marked up here, right? On Wyckoff Sundays, right? So that's the zone right there. We'll go to the 4 hour. Yeah, so that's the same zone, right? So from here to here, we were looking at the potential for longs. And if not, then again, like we were looking at this area here, I believe, right? That pushed to the upside there where we swept those highs for shorts, right? And as you guys can see, I mean, what the hell, right? We ended up going right into that area there, getting some really nice buy opportunities from that level. Personally, I ended up executing on opportunities here, right? And then obviously we saw the market go ahead and redistribute as we got back into this level here. Definitely expected this to get a little higher because we did have imbalance that was sitting in this level, but we did reach the minimum zone that we were looking for. This is really where the buying started to bring us right back down, right? So that was really where it made sense to see mitigations. And we do see like institutional candles appearing here at the top, right? Nice 4 hour institutional candle there and a nice 4 hour trap candle here that kind of signified that we could be seeing that push lower, right? And now, obviously we've broken order flow. So we'll speak about that in a little bit, but that's crypto there. And yeah, that's really that. So, obviously those are the major pairs, right? So I know I did a mix of both. And normally I'm supposed to stick to, the review and then we go into this week. I know I kind of did a mix of both, but let's kind of go ahead and start off with dollar regardless. So yeah, so like I was saying with dollar, we really marked up these two main zones last week. This zone we ended up trading into first. It did look really good order flow wise to hold, but ever since obviously taking that low, we did end up seeing the reversal for the buys, right? Now, what's interesting here is what we can see on the daily, because now we definitely have a daily institutional down candle that started here that we've now seen engulf, right? So we have that daily institutional down candle. When we look at the weekly as well, we can see here that we also have a weekly trap candle. So we have our up candle here, we have our down candle with wicks on both sides, and we see that the previous the previous week ran the low of the week before, right? So, when we had this zone here, right, this low here just barely got ran there, and that's the low of the trap candle, and we ended up closing all the way up here, closing very, very strong. So basically what I wouldn't be surprised to see for this upcoming week would be a potential retest back down into the daily institutional candle to then give us longs to continue to have a bullish week the next week, right? Whenever I see trap candles like this, personally, that's what I like to lean towards, especially when we see that that trap candle has run lows during that time, right? So we have the daily trap candle there, and we also have the daily institutional candle that ended up playing out right here. So what I'm thinking is I think that pullbacks coming back into this area to continue the longs, to continue the order flow would be blessed. And specifically, if we can not take this high, right? If we can hold this high here at 100.50 and from there get a pullback into that level, I think we can see a very quick, very fast reaction. And that could end up being the low of the week, for the week, right? Because again, like if we have this being a trap candle, and then we see like the next candle, obviously that's about to open here in a few hours, right? And that candle starts off bearish, right? We end up getting that down candle starting there, and then it flips, becomes bullish, right? And then we obviously just have a wick to the downside. It's very unlikely that that wick gets hit for a while, right? And so that's kind of what we want to see happen is like create the bottom wick, right? Hopefully hold the high so we have a target, and then from there push up towards there, right? Again, seeing a trap candle like that on a higher time frame for me, does look pretty good there on the weekly. And the fact that inside of there we have that daily down candle too, right? And obviously we did see like the market give us this big sell-off from there that ended up really looking like that push to the downside was not meant to be a long-term sell idea, but it was meant to just go ahead and sweep previous lows, get back into order flow, and then continue the longs, right? So again, ideally that would be really the idea there. So if we can again push down towards there, specifically here where the candle is on the daily, right? That would put us in at around 99.64, right? We do have these wicks here that are like almost equal lows. We have this here too. So, I mean, ideally, if we could get down towards like 99.5, I think that could end up being where we can potentially see longs for this upcoming week, right? So even better if like we kind of come up, we get a big sweep down. I mean, I think that's going to make it super clear that we can potentially get longs there on dollar, right? So, I mean, that's personally what I'm looking for, right? For this coming week, it does look like, again, order flow is just going to continue, right? We're not really getting, a bigger pullback like we wanted into this level, at least not yet. But we will see what ends up happening there, right? Then again, guys, what I will mention too for this upcoming week is we do have NFP this week, right? So obviously keep that in mind as you guys are going about your week, because NFP is obviously going to be the, big catalyst for any moves that we have, right? But we're full of news this week though, right? It looks like every single day we have news, right? We got Powell speaking on Monday. That should actually be big. So I might be trading on Monday. And then, we have Jolts on Tuesday, right? Core retail sales on Wednesday. We got unemployment claims on Thursday, and then we got NFP on Friday. So, yeah, it's quite the week. It's quite the week this week that's coming up. So let's try and plan our trades around these news events, right? As these news events are coming up, we're going to go ahead, keep an eye out, see if there's going to be any signs of manipulation inside of those times. Because that's really going to be, again, like it's good to have news events, right? Obviously, we're not going to know which one is really going to be the one that's going to let us hold things long term. So, but definitely though, that's going to be the moment that's probably going to give us the best setup for, our longs that we want, right? So just keep an eye out for it, right? See if we can get any manipulations during those times. And that's obviously going to be what is going to be the trade that we're going to want to hold, for a longer period of time and hopefully see that weekly candle close, bullish above 100.5, right? So I do think the next weekly candle should at least get above 100.5 and close above there, right? If we're really going to see this again, be a trap candle and continue higher, right? Which it does look like is the most likely scenario at the moment, right? So yeah, we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. But that's really what I'm thinking here for US dollar. All right. How can we align that with some of our pairs here? Right. Well, let's look at the weekly for things like EU. Obviously, first of all, we do have, potential distributions here on EU, right? Which means that there is a pretty high likelihood that we do end up getting below, this low right here, especially um, how close we are to it, right? So maybe the next week, again, like if we do get a pullback there on dollar, again, that same relative zone would be here on EU, right? So maybe we do end up again holding here, right? Maybe a sweep like that would be nice to then go ahead and get down towards those levels, or it ends up being more like a redistribution, right? And we do actually get that higher move there, right? Maybe we actually do sweep this high, right? Get an institutional candle, and then we can go ahead and get in on the test to redistribute and then come lower, right? This would be my cleanest personal preference, right? If we could see something like that. Granted, that would mean that, again, dollar would like do that as well, like down to here. Dollar looks a lot less likely. It looks a lot more strong, right? When we look at the comparison between the two, like EU has not even gotten below this low here. Dollar already is well above that, right? So, when it comes to the relation between the two, it's a little bit odd right now, right? So because Euro USD is seeing a lot less weakness compared to dollar strength, maybe this redistribution scenario can still make sense, right? Maybe we do get a big buy up above the high of the potential accumulation we were thinking. And then from there, maybe there we start to look for the sells, right? But all I know is like for dollar, I think down here towards these levels, we start to align that with wherever these pairs will be at the time, and we'll see if it makes sense, right? USD CAD, just absolutely booming it ever since our entry down here. I mean, really barely any pullbacks as well. What else do we have to go into? GU, right? I do think GU will most likely get lower as well. So again, if we do get pullbacks on GU, like even back up into this area here, right? I think that would be great to look for potential shorts, right? Granted, we kind of already tapped into there here, right? With that wick there. So it is possible again, like price just dumps off. I do think that there's liquidity below here by the looks of it, right? Long wick, almost equal lows. So to me, that looks like we'll most likely see a new low there on GU. Just like we were thinking last week, right? We were thinking that GU most likely could reach this area down in here. And maybe there, we see how things switch up. But yeah, the highs on GU definitely bother me. Though, like when it comes down to it, I mean, like, you know, not really the best, cleanest highs, right? Lots of wicks, right? Not great candles, really. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if we can end up targeting those highs later on, but I do think short term wise, we should see another sweep down towards these levels. And then maybe there we can look for longs, but only time will tell, right? But maybe we do get that, right? Same with AU. I mean, right now everything looks really weak, right? But really there's no sign for us to like look for the buys at the moment um on a lot of these pairs. So we just got to let those accumulations play out if they're going to, right? Like here we do have the full distribution. We've been selling off and we're coming below the low of the distribution. Does that mean we're going to reaccumulate? Not necessarily. We could just continue to dump off. So we're going to want to see again a full-on accumulation play out below these lows if we're really going to look for again longs again on this. But as of right now, again, like I said, I think it's best to just play the order flow, continue to see the longs happen, especially after we've seen this, push to the downside recover. That does make it look like these highs are weak, and that will most likely get a push back down into these levels to go and break those highs, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking for this coming week there with the dollar pairs. All right, guys. We already spoke about what I was looking for gold and for silver. So you don't really need to go into that. Yeah, you guys can go back and see that in the beginning of the video. Yeah, I mean, again, if gold does end up holding this high here, right, and we end up selling off, then obviously this could be that this push to the upside was a manipulation. If we end up going above the high and then pulling back, I think that's a very high probability buy scenario where we've kind of broken the potential redistribution. And then from there, we get back down into the buy zones and continue with the order flow. That's basically what we're going to want to see there with gold. And then with silver, right? Same idea, right? Again, we're going to want to see a push through here, right? I definitely see the potential for equal highs sitting above there. So I do wonder if that's what we're going to end up seeing happen for silver if again like we can pull back or something, give us a long opportunity to head up towards those equal highs. That's personally what I'm leaning towards, but we got to let the price go ahead and dictate that, right? And then we have indices, right? So obviously indices for us, right? Not looking so hot, right? Looking a little scary, looking like we might retest tariff lows. We'll pay attention to US 30 in this area here, right? But again, guys, I do think that, you know, things aren't looking great. Right. And the thing is like how slow it's all happening. Like I said, when things are really fast, that's when I'm like, okay, yeah, that can potentially be a sweep. But when things are going slow, that's where, again, like, when we're kind of retesting highs like these are the ones that typically will hold, at least for the short term. So not looking great for the indices at the moment, right? But we'll see how all of that goes there, right? So, yeah, that's indices. And we ended up going into crypto as well. So yeah, we've pretty much gone through there. Right. Let's see here. What pairs you were speaking on. So GU we went over. I guess we didn't go over UJ actually. So yeah, UJ last week we were looking for longs, just continuations, right? They were pretty obvious for me. I'm not looking for shorts on this. I think we just reaccumulated with this huge push to the downside here, reaccumulated again here with that push to the downside, and then now last week we have this nice down candle there. So if I was gonna look for price to continue from somewhere, I'd want to see something like that. If we can get UJ to pull back down into these levels and then continue to long. I know we are coming down, or I know we're coming into a zone here and everything, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're gonna, again, see the big sell-off, right? We could easily just see this continue to buy up and push through those highs. So I'm going to be cautious, obviously, approaching that. If we do end up seeing like institutional candles in this area and like stuff like that in here, then maybe, right? But, at the moment, with the way that price has been behaving as we get into that zone, it looks very bullish. It looks very strong. It looks like we're moving very healthy to just continue to boom, right? So that's what I'm thinking there with UJ. And then we have what else here? What have we got here for US for US 30? We spoke about that. And NZD CAD, right? So let's go into NZD CAD here, bigger time frame. Okay, so NZD CAD has been seeing a bit of a sell-off. Obviously, we could see bigger time frame wise, NZD CAD is in a downtrend. We did have a nice accumulation that played out here, right? But then the way that we see price buy up so fast, so aggressive, and then coming right back down, this doesn't exactly scream strength to me, right? Especially when we're coming back into, previous zones like these ones, right? Where we had distributions take place, right? So, I mean, honestly, this is looking kind of bearish to me at the moment. We have a very big wick here with a very high point of volume. So the most likely scenario I would say is that NZD CAD just continues down, right? We even have this big buy up that's now sold all the way back down, right? We can also see that same as with dollar, we have a weekly trap candle potential, right? We have that trap candle that's just printed there. We have liquidity here. We have high volume low there. I think it's pretty likely that we actually do see NZD CAD reaching down towards these levels from a bigger time frame perspective, right? So yeah, daily time frame wise, I mean, not bad, right? Again, I do think though lots of wicks to the downside here, right? When we see like this wick here, right? That wick there, that wick there. I mean, here we have a solid candle at least, but I do think that we also have this solid up candle here. Combine that with the fact that we have a weekly trap, I do think the most likely scenario is bearish, right? We do have pretty equal highs here though. So yeah, but I do think that this low here, very high volume, right? Yeah, we'll probably see price go below there. That's what I think. So if we can get like manipulations up to then sell off, that would be the preferred idea there, right? And then maybe even seeing these highs here hold at 0.809, right? 0.809. We could probably see that hold. And then again, like I said, I would probably favor this to head towards the high volume low here and see us dump off, right? Towards that level. So that's what it looks like to me. With this, granted, we do have a lot of equal highs, so maybe later on we can buy up. But yeah, as of right now, I don't really like to see high volume lows like that. So yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, I think that we probably will see again another push down, which would kind of align with what we're thinking with oil, right? Obviously, oil being so bullish right now. That would bring CAD bullish as well, and that would mean that a lot of these XXX CAD pairs would also drop, right? Because if Canadian dollar is stronger, we're going to see this pair go down, right? Which is kind of the most likely scenario we're thinking from a fundamental perspective, right? So yeah, guys, that's really all the ideas that we're looking for there. All right, keep an eye out for some of the zones and some of the things we spoke about here. I think we're in an interesting place right now, like obviously with the war and everything like that going on. I think that, it doesn't really look like that war is going to end anytime soon. We were kind of exploring the possibility of like, all right, maybe it's just a short-term thing, right? Maybe we kind of get these impulses and then they, retreat, right? And then we obviously saw gold dump the way that it did and everything. To me, it still looks like a liquidation event to me when it comes to gold. I think they were looking to liquidate people. So that's why, again, I'm still saying longs. And I think we just continue to now this week align with the war narrative, right? Oil going higher, dollar going higher, stuff like that. And then, even gold as well, right? Starting to do that. So we shall see. We shall see, guys. That's gonna be it for me today then, guys. All right. Hopefully you guys learned something from today's session. And once again, if you guys are on the YouTube, comment, subscribe, like, join the Discord as well. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. All right. Much love, much appreciation. Peace out.